Here on the rudder. Make sure there's no glue running. Looks good. Now we can go ahead and remove this building table. We don't need it anymore. And this is where I like to take two 8-inch tall boxes and set them up close to each other. And then put the airplane down in between so it sits nice and level. Okay, now that the airplane's all blocked up on these blocks here, what we're going to do is we're going to get your 070 by 36-inch carbon push rod, and we're going to cut two 2-inch pieces off of here. And the way I like to do it is with an X-Acto. Here, I'll put it on my grid here. And when I cut this carbon, what I'll do is we'll use a grid pattern here or make a 2-inch mark. When with a sharp X-Acto knife, I'll put it right on that line and just roll it back and forth. And it'll pop right through it. So we're going to cut two 2-inch pieces. Looks like so. Those are for the aileron push rods. And then we're going to take the remaining piece and we're going to cut it in half. And it is going to be 32 inches. 16 is the middle. There we go. We got two 16 inches and two 2 inches. Then we're going to take your heat shrink tubing, the 5-inch heat shrink tubing, and we're going to cut it into 1-inch segments, both of them. Okay, and we'll take our little Z-bend guys. Here's some of them under the box. The 8 Z-bend pieces. And it's going to be important that we take some sandpaper and we actually roughen up the steel just a little bit on both sides of the straight shaft side where it's going to glue, and clean it off with some alcohol. Okay, now that we got all those little Z-bend pieces all sanded and cleaned off, what we're going to do is we're going to take our 16-inch carbon push rod and we're going to place heat shrink tubing over it. We're going to get our regular CA, not our foam safe, this is regular, and I'm going to place just a little bit of glue on the carbon rod. We'll line up the steel Z-bend. We're going to roll that glue around, make sure we get glue on all the way around. Slide the shrink tubing up to the end of the carbon, and then we're going to have that Z-bend hang over about, I guess it's about 6 millimeters over the end of the carbon. Just like so. And we'll go ahead and light the lighter and shrink that tubing up. And then we're going to do that on one end for all 4 push rods, the 2 16 inches and the 2 2 inches. Now on these 2-inch push rods for the ailerons, we might want to take these 1-inch shrink tubing and actually cut them into 3/4 inch lengths. We'll cut 4 of them into 3/4. And then we'll glue one of the Z-bend ends onto each end of those. So now we have all 4 push rods with the Z-bends just on one end. We're not going to have it on the other end yet. Now we're going to place this push rod through the elevator horn, push the Z-bend through the elevator horn, and bring the carbon push rod up to the front, like so. Same with the rudder on this side. Now when we place this is back to the 1-inch heat shrink tubing over the push rod. Actually, first you want to push your little push rod standoff, your plywood push rod standoff. Push that onto the carbon first. Make sure that it's moving freely back and forth on the push rod. There's no friction there. Then your shrink tubing. Get your CA again and your lighter. And put a little bit of the CA on the push rod. Get your Z-bend wire, put it in there. And now we're going to make sure that that Z-bend, the angle of that Z-bend is such that when the servo is attached to the side of the fuselage, that Z-bend goes through that through the horn, just like so. So we're going to make sure that that Z-bend is going down. Or maybe a little flame from the super glue, because it is flammable. Just blow it out. And it'll be hot, so don't set it down on the foam. And then we'll do the same with the rudder push rod. Put your standoff on first, then your shrink tubing. We'll find the Z-bend wire here first. Okay, we got it ready. Put some CA on the carbon. And slide the shrink tubing over the steel. Again, make sure that Z-bend's pointing down so that the horn will go through. There we go, we got our push rod ends made. You can't get any easier than that. Now we can actually take our servos that I have here, the Hi-Tech HS56. They're highly recommended servos for this airplane. And I used the long arm on there. And for most 3D aerobatics, I put it on the very outside hole. If you're a sport flyer, maybe you want to come 1 hole in, possibly 2 holes in if you're not going to do really any aerobatics at all. But these servos come highly recommended for this airplane due to their speed, their power, and the correct servo arm. What we're going to do is, with the arm mounted like this, we're going to have 2 servos mounted with arms opposite of each other, 2 pairs like this. So they'll be set up like this with 2 pairs. These will be the ailerons, these will be the elevator and the rudder. And what we're going to do when they're set up like this, with the horns 90 degrees coming off the servo, and I set them so with the transmitter on, sub trims to 0, regular trims to 0, and you know, all the dual rates and everything set. It actually came from a previous model, so most everything is set. But most important, the trims and the sub trims to 0. Put the horns on 90 degrees. Then we're going to take and scratch up the side of the servo opposite of the horn. It'll be this side here with a little bit of sandpaper. Just take that shine off of it. That's all it takes. And do that to all 4. Blow off any excess dust you have. Find your pair of servos here. This is going to be for the elevator and the rudder. And we're going to take our masking tape at this point, and we're going to pull off a couple small 3 pieces. We're going to stick the elevator and the rudder flat.